For RCR TV, I'm Joey Jackson. On this episode of Cell Tower News, I talk with Alex Gellman, CEO and founder and co-founder of Vertical Bridge, about possibilities and pitfalls of tower ownership and leasing, as well as the latest news in the tower industry.
Today's episode is brought to you by Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.net.
For 20 years, Nate has been the undisputed global leader in safety, standards, and education for the wireless and broadcast communications infrastructure industries.
All right, welcome back to Cell Tower News, where we discuss the backbone of the wireless world. I hope everyone had a fun and filling Thanksgiving holiday, but let's talk towers. But before we dive into tower ownership and leasing, let's check out what's going on in the industry with Jared Matula, writer of the Cell Tower Wrap column on rcrwireless.com.
Thanks, Joey. It's been a busy few weeks for tower rescues. 3 people had to be rescued from towers in 2 different incidents. The first one happened in Salem, Oregon, when a deputy spotted what appeared to be a young girl climbing a 150-foot monopole cell tower. As he began talking to the distressed girl, he called in backup in the form of deputies and firefighters. Deputy Matt Lacrosse, a trained negotiator, managed to convince the girl not to jump and instead climb down low enough so that firefighters could assist her in her descent. Sources indicate the tower belongs to Crown Castle. The other rescue happened on a mountain in Tooele County, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Utah. 2 men who had been flown in by helicopter to perform routine maintenance on a radio tower were stranded when the rotors of their helicopter froze. The 2 men were completely unprepared for the predicament, having no warm clothing or provisions. The snowy mountain was very precarious for rescuers as there was too little snow for snowmobiles, yet too much snow for heavier vehicles to make it to the top. This meant rescuers had to hike up 3/4 of a mile up this steep mountain. Cloud cover also prevented a chopper from landing. Difficult situation. So we commend the emergency personnel in both of these cases for their dedicated service and life-saving actions. In other news, a wrongful death lawsuit against SBA Communications and FDH Velocitel from 2014 has reached federal court. The suit stems from the collapse of 2 towers in West Virginia that killed 3 workers and injured 2 others. The details of the case are complicated, but the gist is that the plaintiffs claim that the companies in question did not properly prepare them for how to handle repairs to the site and had knowledge that there were requirements for the repairs, but did not follow or enforce compliance with those safety standards. On the other side of the case, FDH Velocitel claims that the work was done negligently and did not follow proper protocol. There's a lot of finger pointing and denial of responsibility in this one, but hopefully the federal court can sort it out. We will provide an update on this case as it becomes available. And finally, there is more tower theft in the news. Cell tower batteries valued at $16,000 were stolen off a site on Main Street in Graysonville, Maryland. A service technician arriving to perform routine maintenance, isn't that always how it is, routine maintenance, discovered 20 batteries were missing from the site. According to reports, the batteries were manufactured by Alcatel-Lucent and weighed about 70 pounds each. The incident is currently under criminal investigation. Police say there was no sign of forced entry, which means the thief likely had knowledge of the combinations. So he used to work there or something? Ooh. That's it for me. For more cell tower news, check out my weekly tower wrap every Friday on rcrwireless.com. Back to you, Joey.
All right, thanks for that, Jared. Now that you're caught up on all the latest industry news from the last few weeks, it's time to delve into our conversation with Alex Gellman of Vertical Bridge. Alex and I discussed all sorts of topics related to the tower leasing and ownership. Let's take a look at that interview right now. All right, I'm here with Alex Gellman, CEO and co-founder of Vertical Bridge. Alex, first of all, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
And can you, first of all, let's get to know you a little bit better. Give me a brief overview of Vertical Bridge and your role with the company.
Sure. So Vertical Bridge is a private company that owns and operates telecom infrastructure for wireless companies in the U.S., and I am the CEO.
Okay. And you came from the carrier side of things as co-founder of Horizon Cellular early in your career. Is that correct?
That's a long time ago.
Can you tell me a bit about how and why you came to the tower leasing side of things?
Sure. So Horizon was a rural cellular operator. We're talking about early and mid 90s. And a good friend of mine and I were working there, and we saw PCS coming. So there was the auctions, and we saw that there was going to be a big boom in PCS. And because of the higher band frequencies, it was going to require a lot more sites. And just so happened his wife worked for a real estate investment trust. And we started talking to their senior management about their rooftops, and they really were not tuned into what was coming. So we felt that there would be a boom in demand for sites, that there was an opportunity to work with real estate owners to make their rooftops available for this PCS expansion. So we started a company called Apex Site Management, and co-founded it with a gentleman named Mark Gansey, who you may be familiar with, who is my partner to this day. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got into the site side of the business.
And so can you tell me a little bit about the tower leasing process and the role that Vertical Bridge plays in that process?
Sure. So, I mean, our at the simplest level, our job is to deliver sites to the wireless carriers and any radio operator, anybody who wants to use wireless antenna or technology. And so we deliver that real estate, and that real estate can come in a bunch of different forms. One form would be a tower that we own, but other forms can include a rooftop where we don't own the building, but we sublease the rooftop. It can include billboards. It could include water tanks. There's all different kinds of structures, and it could be all different kinds of towers. Anything from a stealth pole to a 1,500-foot radio tower.
And part of what you offer. Sorry. Part of your what you offer is also helping people with colocation. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And so how does that process work? Does someone approach you looking to lease their property, or are carriers the ones who usually initiate the process?
Basically, both. Primarily, carriers still do what they've always done, which is they'll take a network design, they'll draw X marks the spot in the map, draw a circle around it, and say, I need a site here. And, they'll generally look for existing structures first, but if not, they'll build, they'll have somebody build a new one for them. Used to be they build it themselves. Now pretty much nobody builds for themselves. They'll have somebody build it for them. We try to really stay in front of the carriers as much as we can, and we really try to capture as much of their budget as we can and influence them. But, hard to say how much success you can have doing that. They generally still are very disciplined, very organized, and do it their way.
And you guys just had kind of a big acquisition recently with Ensight Mobile Mass, a mobile broadband operator out of Wisconsin and Michigan. What can you tell me about that acquisition?
Yeah, that was so. Ensight is their wireless company is called Cellcom, and they're a very successful independent telephone company based in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and they've run a very successful wireless business, Cellcom, up in that region. And so these are towers that they built for themselves, for their wireless division. So they're built with a lot of capacity, great locations. They were always the local company, the local phone company. So they were able to get towers built that really nobody else could. And so we've had relationships with them for a long time. Bob Page, who runs our M&A group here, has known them for many, many years. And, as they started to think through, should we, is this an asset we should monetize? They got comfortable with us as a partner for them in the long term, because they still are on all these towers and will need to continually do upgrades and add frequencies and do all the things that a wireless operator has to do. So they wanted somebody they could partner with, and we're happy that it was us.
So When you're looking for a tower, what's the most important characteristic a space needs to have before you're going to invest in that site?
We really look for four things, and we always have. One is location. It's a real estate business. Location, location, location. So where is the tower? Where are competitive towers around it? Do we think it's a location that will lease up? Secondly, is it physically a good structure? Does it have the capacity to accommodate additional tenants? And or do we have to put capital into it in order to add tenants? So that's very important to us. Thirdly is what we would call good paper. It's a real estate business, so we're looking for a site where it's good collateral, they have good, clean title, we can mortgage the site, there's no environmental issues. That's very, very important. And then lastly, the creditworthiness of the tenants, the revenue stream that comes with the tower. So those are really four bedrock principles that we've been following for more than a decade.
All right. So what's the advantage of leasing as opposed to owning a site?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Advantage for us or advantage for a carrier?
For a carrier, I guess.
Oh, okay. I think the advantage for a carrier is if they own the site, they've stranded capital in that site, and that's capital that they can't use to add more radios. It's capital that they can't use to get more customers. And so I think as the carriers have evolved their thinking, they have recognized that it's owning the site isn't really very strategic, and they had varying degrees of success in terms of leasing it out, and that the sites essentially would be more valuable to the tower companies, and the tower companies would pay them a good price for them. So really all the major carriers have, really almost every carrier in the United States has divested their towers with the exception of US Cellular. But just in the last 2 years, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have sold off their sites.
So when one of these carriers is leasing a tower, whose responsibility is it for the maintenance?
So what we maintain, I like to say, is steel and concrete. The electronics are not maintained by us; they're maintained by the carriers. So our business is really fairly simple. We have to maintain access to the site, the physical site itself, the fence, the tower, the foundation. But the electronics, the antennas, the lines, those are maintained by the tenants. So it's like a building that doesn't have any air conditioning to stop working and any toilets to clog.
All right, gotcha. So how could a tower owner maximize the value of their property?
The biggest thing that a tower owner can do to maximize the value of their property is lease it up, add tenants.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So what's the best advice you could give to somebody looking to lease a tower property or a space for an antenna? And what are some of maybe the pitfalls that they could encounter?
You mean as far as a carrier looking to lease a location?
Or maybe somebody who has some real estate and is looking to lease it to a carrier?
Got it. I think that, it's hard to get them if you don't have an existing relationship with the carriers. They don't really like to go to new locations and negotiate a new lease from scratch. It's very time consuming. So one thing I would say is go as fast as you can, make it as quick of a process as you can. Secondly, have your diligence together, all the documents I was talking about in terms of environmental and title. A lot of these carriers will want to see that and satisfy themselves. They're planning to be at these sites for decades. So they want to make sure they can stay there and that there's no liability for being there. So you have to really have your documentation teed up. And then those are the key. Go fast and have good paperwork.
Gotcha. And so final question, let's break out your crystal ball heading into next year. Where is this market headed?
Boy, you're gonna put me on the spot now.
It's a loaded question.
Well, look, I think that I think we're in an ironic time in the sense that asset values are very, very high, but the carriers have not been that active in the past year. So really only Verizon has been investing significantly in their network consistent with past years. AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint have really not invested much. And AT&T is well down from prior years. At the same time, 3 of the 4 carriers are laying people off. Verizon and Sprint have all announced programs or implementing programs to cut out some middle management, those kinds of things. So they're all going through these reorganization processes. Yet asset values are really high. So the reason why they're high is in the long run, demand for mobile data has skyrocketed. It continues to skyrocket. I literally I don't know how many hours I spend, but I get messages from my carrier saying my data's used up, and then I text 2 of my sons and tell them to use Wi-Fi because they're chewing it up. They're watching video, and they don't really care where they are. They just want to watch the highlights or whatever the heck they're watching. And that's the world we're in. So this explosion of video on the mobile devices is really driving incredible bandwidth growth from the carriers. They have to invest in their networks in order to meet it. There's 3 things they can do. They can buy more spectrum or acquire more spectrum, either from the government or from someone else who already has it. They can have better efficiency of the spectrum, so 4G to 5G, or they can add more sites. And the efficiency gains from moving from 4G to 5G are starting to flatten out. There's physics involved there, and people are talking about the flattening of that gain. Spectrum's hard to come by, and it takes a long time. So they have to invest in adding more sites. That's why there's interest in small cell and just anything they can do to densify their networks efficiently. And it's all driven by the demand. So in the long run, the carriers will need to invest in their networks. And there's sort of these cycles where they invest in a new technology, then they harvest the new technology, and then they fill it in, and then comes the next technology. So I think really where we are is they've invested in LTE. They're harvesting it the last year or 2. They're going to start investing in filling in, so we'll see more amendments next year and more additional capacity added to the LTE networks that are out there. And then will come 5G, which will be a new network that they'll invest in building. And it's just sort of ever thus. It's a cycle. Mm-hmm. Carriers in a different phase of the cycle, but it's unavoidable.
Yep. Well, that's some great insight. And Alex, thanks for being a guest on my show.
Joey, thank you so much.
All right. Again, I would like to thank Alex for taking the time to talk with me and sharing his vast knowledge of the tower industry. But finally today, I'll leave you with a heartwarming photo courtesy of Garrett McCool, which is, by the way, a very McCool last name, of Dover, Delaware. The caption says simply, Tower Cat. And that's all you need to know. Enjoy.
Cell Tower News is a production of RCR TV. To reach Joey Jackson or suggest a show topic for Cell Tower News, contact him at jjackson@rcrwireless.com or on Twitter at @duck_Jackson. For more Cell Tower News, please visit rcrwireless.com.